Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the El Calvario podcast. I'm joined with Pastor Andrew Suarez once again. I was debating how to say your name, if I should say Andrew or Andres.
Do both.
So it's Pastor Andrew Andres Suarez.
That's right. That'll be my middle name from now on.
Yes. It's been a while since we've had. I feel like we say this often.
Yeah,
it's
it's
been
like
a while.
3 weeks. I think we took a break.
Yeah.
Roughly, more or less.
Because we've had some special guests come by, so we've been posting up those videos, and hopefully you all have been enjoying that. And speaking of, just again, continue to like, share, subscribe, follow, all of that stuff. So, Pastor, how you been?
I've been doing good. I've been really grinding, trying to get stuff done, because next week I got the National Spanish Conference, and then we get into July, which I got the English family camp, then Spanish camp, and basically after this week, my summer's over. We just got stuff in event after event.
And then you have your yearly family trip after that to look forward to at least.
Yes, but that's going to be probably shorter than normal because, again, there's just stuff to do.
Yeah.
Don't have the time.
It's usually that time of the year. Summer, always the busiest, which is...
It's weird. Church seasons in general really pick up from around Easter through September, and there used to be a lull after that. But for whatever reason, halfway through October and November have really picked up like everywhere. And then it dies down depending on if your church celebrates Christmas or not. Our church does, so it doesn't die down.
Yeah.
And then you start the cycle all over again. So, yeah, it just is what it is.
I think it's just probably, weather, I'm guessing, right?
I don't know. It just, people went back to school. There used to be things calming down, but it just, I don't know. People are conference crazy now.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, there's currently a lot of events coming up, just a lot of stuff to prepare for. I'm also getting married.
Yeah. Just like 3 weeks away.
Yeah.
2 weeks away.
So that's something
I don't know when this is airing, so
yeah,
maybe this will air after
we're
your
a few
wedding.
weeks. We're weeks away now. At
If
this
it
point.
airs after, congratulations.
Thank you. But yeah, we also have that to look forward to, and I guess before we're gonna continue kind of on this topic of the role between like a parent and a child. We've been talking about this whole theme of relationships, and hopefully today we'll kind of conclude or sunset this topic for a little bit. We'll probably maybe come back to it some other day. But I did want to ask you just maybe as like an icebreaker or something as we get started. Just as a parent, what is kind of one thing that you hope to leave for your children?
Well, I mean, there's 2 or 3 things. Obviously, number one is the spiritual. I know too many people who are weak spiritually and have no courage to be different. So that's one. They need to know the same God that I know, love that God, seek that God, and have conviction enough to stand up for him as well. So that's the first thing. And then the other is money. It is biblical to leave money to your kids, which we're going to talk more about that in a minute. And then the last thing, or I guess maybe I should, whatever order these are in, but the example of just a normal household. For the love of God, most people don't know what that even looks like anymore. And in fact, they'll tell you there's no such thing as normal. No, there is a normal household. We just, as a society, have let it go. We need to get back there so that we can keep raising up generations that are stable emotionally, mentally, spiritually, all those things.
So I guess before we get into the topic, can you quickly maybe summarize what is a normal household?
Well, I mean, biblically, the man of the house is the leader. He's the example. He teaches, the Bible talks about justice and righteousness, or, teaches these things to the family by word, by example. The mother, yes, she is submitted to the husband. The wife in general tends to teach the values. While the husband might exemplify them, the wife tends to teach them. And so a wife will give these values to the children. She spends the majority of the time with her kids. It makes no sense, little side note I'm throwing in here, makes no sense for a woman to have kids and then, I got to go work full time. No, you don't. Adjust your budget, stay home with the kids. Why have kids for somebody else to raise? Anyway, a little side note. Yes, and then there are kids in the home. And a boy should be a boy and a girl should be a girl. And we need to help them grow as such.
Okay, and I'm pretty sure we can delve into that like a whole lot more, but that was just a quick little summary there. So you did touch on something that obviously we're going to focus on in today's episode, is just inheritance.
Yeah.
Let's just start. What does that even mean?
All right, so this was something that took me forever to even really comprehend as a father. And I didn't even understand it initially. It took, 2-3 years after I had kids with my pastor, and he probably doesn't even realize that he taught me that, but it just him saying some things finally got in my head. So, we both grew up Hispanic. That concept, it really isn't there. It is a little bit, but not much.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of it, we grew up in North America, and even though it's a fallacy, they glorify the concept of the self-made man. And if you have generational wealth, that's a negative. That's a bad thing, they say. That's not what the Bible says, though, okay? So I had these types of mentalities, so I thought what I had was mine to do with what I wanted when I wanted. And it was just through conversation with my pastor, he'd bring up, just for example, yeah, you can throw all that money over here, but then your kids have no vacation. I could do XYZ over here, but what about when it's time to go to college? And it just, through these conversations slowly, and again, it wasn't immediate. It took several conversations for like 2 or 3 years just to get it in my head. Oh, I have to live a different way now. Because it's not about me and what we're doing right now and what I think is right now. I need to start thinking about the future and what I'm leaving my kids in a variety of ways. Now, money's the easiest, most tangible way to understand it, but it's about your whole life. What kind of legacy, what thing are you leaving for your kids?
So then what exactly does the Bible say about inheritance?
Well, I mean, so you get an inheritance just by being born. And this is the basis of the whole New Testament. The whole New Testament is about, I need to be born again. As what? Am I just going through a process to be new? No. I am born again as a child of God. Before I was just a creation. Now I am a child of God made in his image. And so as a child of God, the child just receives from the parents. And to get even more specific with it, that word testament and testament and testament that we keep finding in the New Testament refers to last will and testament, which in the book of Hebrews tells us the last will and testament doesn't mean anything until the father dies. Well, there's a reason that when Jesus got on the cross, he said, it is finished. Him being our eternal Father, our heavenly Father, the creator of all things, through whom all things were made. So he, being the Father, dies on the cross. Through his death, the promises are activated. All the testament is activated to those who are and live as children of God. And so here's the point of the testament. And what's funny is we're doing community group stuff, and this actually ties in. I'm not going to hit it in the first week. I'll hit it in a few weeks. The Bible spends a whole lot of time in the book of Hebrews telling us that the New Testament is better than the Old, and the New Covenant is better than the Old, because in the Old, there was no way. In the Old, you had to earn. In the Old, you had to be good enough, and nobody ever was.
Yeah.
In the New, you just got to be born, and you got to live the new life. We get the new things by faith, while before we had to earn and still couldn't get it. And it goes through all these things about people who wanted to obtain the promise, had faith in the promise and didn't receive it. But we get in the new, and in the new we got the better promise, the better covenant. While before they had a contract with God, we have the last will and testament with God. We live as sons, they lived as servants, and a son gets a part of the Father's home. So that's what we got in the New Testament. Everything that he has given us, we got by inheritance through his death on the cross. We live by inheritance today. And so we need to get that in our head. It's not about me, not about me earning. It's about me receiving by faith in my Father Jesus, and now I'm his son.
So then as a parent, how do we kind of reflect that to our kids, right?
Well, it's about living a different way. So Jesus, he lived in perfect love, obviously. We know that where he went, what he did for others. That doesn't mean he never took care of himself. That's a little side note to throw in, because some people think being a Christian means you never have and you never do and blah, blah, blah. That's not biblical. You are supposed to eat and drink. You are, anyway, side note. But his mind was on other people. Even when he was on the cross, Father, forgive them, he says. His mind is still on others. He's constant consideration, what he's doing, how it's affecting others, how the types of things that he's doing, saying, and so on. So as a father, understanding the calling, I should say as a parent, understanding your calling as a parent to live in love with your children, meaning I have to live my life considering not just the here and now with them, but the future with them. Mm-hmm. So I might set a rule in my home now that might not make a whole lot of sense when they're 5. Yeah. But it will make sense when they're 10. And what I teach today affects tomorrow. The example I give today affects tomorrow. So I need to start living in a different way. It's not about me. It's about their future and about how, if they follow my example, how are my grandkids going to be? If my kids live like me, how is the generation after the grandkids going to be? Mm-hmm. Am I actually passing on any values? Have I taught my kids that wisdom is one of the most valuable things you could have? Or did I teach them that just trivia kind of book learning is the most important thing? Did I teach them how to think? Did I teach them, let's talk about somebody going to get married, okay? Did I teach my son or my daughter that the most important thing is the looks or the money? Or did I teach them to look at the values that person has? All these things matter. All of these things are inheritance. And so we need to change the way we think and live, that in every facet of our lives, we're leaving some sort of legacy for our kids.
And so for someone that's maybe has older children, let's say they're teenagers or young adults, and maybe they haven't been living this life of leaving an inheritance, to say more or less, right? Mm-hmm. Is it too late to kind of instill that in their kids? Or
I mean, there's no matter what, there's consequences to things, right?
Yeah.
But we also know as long as there's life, there's hope. Mm-hmm. As long as we're breathing, God can still do something. So with what we have left, maybe, 17 years have gone by and I haven't taught my kids a thing. Fine. With the time you got left, try.
Yeah.
Do your best, and not just go teach them, but you change, you get better. So you're giving an example. Hey kid, maybe I didn't spend all my time with you right, but you saw how I was for those first 17 years of your life. Now look, I'm a different man. Look, I'm trying to live different, talk different, act different, do everything different. And so, again, we go back to the example and then trying to make the best of the time we have with our kids, talking, teaching, giving those examples. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And aside from the spiritual, I'm guessing there's also like a physical inheritance that parents should also think about?
Okay, so Old Testament. They get into the promised land, which God himself said that's your land. Yes, they had to go to war, but they only got the victory when God gave said victory. Mm-hmm. So yes, they had to take sword and shield, but the victory was given by God, which in turn means the land was given by God. So that first generation who entered into the promised land didn't get it by their own hand. They got it by the hand of God.
Yeah. Okay.
The land is then divided by tribe and household and family. Down to the individual families. This land is separated. Mm-hmm. So this portion of dirt is yours. And that's when we get into Proverbs 22, remove not the old landmarks, where it gets into that, because that's talking about this land is separated. Your family gets this part of the land. Mm-hmm. So the first generation gets it, and it looks like nothing. You gave us a bunch of dirt with rocks in it, can't do anything. So what does the first generation do? They could whine and cry, or they could make their world better. They could work the land and slowly but surely start removing the rocks, start moving things around, trying to till the dirt, trying to do whatever to make it fertile soil. And maybe they died before it was done. Next generation says, well, my dad worked 25% of the land, but now I got me and 2 other sons. Let's try to do more. And so they start working and working. And maybe this generation finally gets all the rocks out. And they take those rocks and they build walls around that land to protect it. Next generation comes, all right, good, we got protection, but our land, the actual land itself, still isn't fertile. So they begin the process of either breaking up the ground. I don't know anything about farming, but still, you know what I mean. They're putting fertilizer, doing whatever they do to make the dirt now fertile. Okay, and they work, they gave it all, and the next generation comes along. We have protected land. We got the walls that they took the rocks out. They built the walls. They made the dirt fertile. Now, my generation has to start to plant. And they start the process of the harvest. And the next generation comes and the harvest gets bigger and harvest gets bigger, harvest gets bigger. Every generation had a responsibility to the inheritance given originally by God, passed through the family to do the best they got with what they were given, and in turn to make it better for the next generation. And this is literally throughout the whole Old Testament, again and again. This man begat this one begat that one, whatever. And we got the land, now do something with it.
Yeah.
It didn't matter who you were in the land. You were born of the people of Israel. You had an inheritance of the promise of God. And you had a responsibility to keep it. Some people wouldn't. They borrowed against their land, or they'd sell part of their land to make more money, and then the next generation has less. And that's how most of us have been taught to live. But there were other people that said it didn't matter if this was the best piece of land or not. It's mine by inheritance. If God gave it and my fathers have worked it, then I need to keep it and make it better. And that's the different type of mindset we're supposed to have. Every generation was supposed to get better. This whole deal about generational wealth is bad. Generational wealth is bad when your children haven't been taught to be thankful for anything. That's it. But if your father, and I'm using money just because it's the easiest, your father worked, he came to the country, worked whatever he could to make $40,000 a year. That's what he topped out at. Well, that's what he did. The next generation comes, they can study, they can go to school. Well, should we stop at the 40? No, we should try to get to the 80 or the 100 or the plus, whatever we can. And then what happens after that? My kids come along, they should make more. They should grow more. The plan is every generation is doing better because we stand on the former generation's shoulders. And so here we get into some stuff that's very big and problematic in our Spanish culture. And I mean, I've seen it in other cultures as well, but I'm Hispanic. So is when the parents think, no, he's got to start at my level. No, that's not how this works. That's not how it's supposed to work. It doesn't make you more humble because you started lower. It doesn't make you better because you started lower. That's not true. We live in the promises of our Father, whether spiritually speaking or carnally speaking. We live in so we got our Father, we got our inheritance, we're going to go farther. That is the whole plan of this thing. And every time in a society, and you can study it all throughout history, every time that there's a fallout of the fathers in particular not doing their part in this area, then in turn, generations start going down, 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 down. Somebody had an inheritance, they misspent it or didn't do anything with it, whether great or small, and then the family starts to trickle down, 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 and then in turn, society falls apart. It was God's intention, and we, again, got 101 Bible verses about it, that families have inheritance. Your kid should be better off than you, not just because they work too, but because you left them something to work with. You know, I've talked about it off our pulpit, and I think there's times where I preach, and I know for a fact it just doesn't get in people's head. Okay. There's times I talk and I know people, they hear what I said and don't equate it to something spiritual. And so they just kind of write it off. But it's prevalent in our culture. Have a bunch of kids and then your kids take care of you.
Yeah.
Is it honorable to take care of your older parents, especially if they're sick? Maybe I should say if they are sick. Because your dad hit 50 doesn't mean that he can't work or take care of himself now. But that's beside the point. Is that honorable? Yes, it is. But why didn't that parent prepare for that age? They knew retirement age was coming. They knew eventually they'd get old and sick. We can't live in a certain way, not thinking about the future, and then become a drain to our children. And I say those things off the pulpit, pastors just whatever. And they can write it off. But no, that's biblical. That is real life. That's biblical. Parents live in a way considering the future. They consider how things are going to be. I don't want to be 70, 80, 90 years old and bankrupting my kids because I can't afford a hospital bill. And again, I realize there's different circumstances. Economically speaking, some start out lower than others. I realize that. But I'm talking about making an honest effort and considering these things in the future. Maybe I did start out dirt poor and the best I could do was only get to a certain level. So some of it's unavoidable. But with proper planning, a lot of things are avoidable. So we live with this idea of inheritance. What am I doing in the future? How is this affecting the future generations?
So just to make sure, I guess it's clear, is just inheritance is really like a stepping stone for this next generation, right? Yeah. That you use that to kind of just give yourself a little bit, was it the leg up, I think is the saying, right? And then
that's
just
the idea.
Keep going from there, right? Yeah. Just building off of that, and then the following generation to do the same thing. Is there anything else that you kind of wanted to touch on in this particular topic?
Just one story that I'm going to butcher because I haven't read it in a while. Yeah. So there was a guy, I'm totally going to butcher this because I haven't read it, but whatever. If anybody Googles the story, I'm sorry it's wrong. I just can't remember exactly how it went. But there was a man who died, and his kids are there with the wife. They're looking through the home, trying to get stuff ready to sell. And they go behind, I believe it was a garage. If not a garage, then it was a barn. And there was a bunch of trees and whatever, and they found a little path. And they started following this path, wondering what it is. And as they went back there, they found like a little altar set up, so to speak. Not an altar, but something you could tell what it was used for, where apparently their father had walked back here all the time, so much so that he ended up literally leaving a path, and he would go back there, and that's where he would pray and spend time with God. That is how we need to live. Long after we die, may our kids keep finding treasure in our lives and how we lived and what we did. That's really how a Christian parent should live.
All right. Yeah. Pastor, thank you again for joining us in another edition of the El Calvario podcast. A lot of good information here today of just things that maybe as a parent, especially a young parent, maybe you're not even considering, right? Because you're young, you think, I got
need
so
to think about it because you guys are having a baby next year.
No.
Yes, come on.
We'll see. No.
When I pray over you at the ceremony, I'm going to pray for babies.
Okay.
Multiple babies at once.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But yeah, again, this is stuff that maybe we overlook, or maybe depending on the culture that we grew up in, it's something that we don't even consider, but it's something of importance for our kids and of future generations of our families. So thank you again, Pastor, for sharing all of that. And for everyone watching, I thank you all for listening, for watching this on YouTube or wherever else you're watching this on. And I just encourage you all to just follow, like, share, subscribe, do all that stuff. Share it with your friend, your enemy, your neighbor, family, whoever it may be. We just want to keep spreading this podcast.
You can send it to your parents, so maybe they leave you
an
inheritance. There you go.
Too. Leave them a hint. But thank you all again for listening and watching. And until the next time, or until the next one, have a great day.